Hello and welcome to this Oda episode of the Eternal Law. On the last Oda episode, we saw a couple of fairly major invasions, the first of which came from the Shimazu using a sneaky invisible army tactic to attack Echizen with me being unawares. However, we managed to defeat them despite them having a very large advantage by sacrificing many of our inferior units to allow the enemy to be smashed to pieces by our matchlock units. Then the Chosokabe equally sneakily attacked Mino. I was expecting it this time, but I wasn't expecting the enemy to be so powerful. Another difficult battle ensued where I used exactly the same strategy, and this time it worked even better. We successfully destroyed the enemy army, even though we had a large disadvantage. But then, the Amako staged a massive invasion of Wakasa province. They didn't attack the castle right away, giving me time to react. One thing I did do was go and retake North Shinano from the Yamanouchi, one victory for the Oda. Then I got all the forces I could together to go and reinforce Wakasa in the event of an enemy attack, but still they did not attack, giving me yet more time to clear things up, and I'm doing so now by attacking Hatekayama in Umi province. Let's continue. The size of the Amako camp is unthinkable. Even from here we can see that their camp and its followers contain a greater population than the crumbling castle town they wish to possess. Even with our men taken into account, they have double our strength. So all we can do now is wait for them to attack and hope that they either make a mistake or underestimate the power of the firearms we sent to the castle before the siege. The men are eager and beg for a chance to fight. Not many men like this remain in Japan today. So we are back with the Oda and we're on the battlefields of Umi today, where Nobuhide is going up against the Hatekayama army, but first he has to wait for his reinforcements from the castle at Umi to arrive. The reinforcements are mostly matchlock ashigaru and long yari ashigaru. It looks like I've got all the time in the world because the enemy force is just forming up inside this little bamboo grove, hiding its troops atop the hill. So I was thinking at first I was going to have to go over there and try and get them down from the hill into a fair fight, but actually as I formed up my army they decided to come out and form up on the plains as well, and then in fact advanced towards me. So in the end all I had to do was wait. You can see I put all my matchlocks on the front line. My hope is to whittle down the enemy's troops as they charge, and then pull the matchlocks back through the spears I have in the second line to hold the enemy in place. So is that going to work? The enemy began to approach. You can see here they're about to come into range of the matchlocks on the front line. First they're coming into range of the bows, who have a slightly extended range despite being actually behind my lines. Then the enemy suddenly cavalry charges, and something I wasn't expecting happens. This cavalry charge causes all of my matchlocks to immediately retreat because I had them on skirmish mode. Seems the distance at which they wish to retreat from enemies on skirmish mode is very large, which means most of them retreated without even firing a shot. So my plan to whittle down the enemy didn't happen at all. Instead, they've just pushed my matchlocks back behind my lines, and now they're going to engage the regular front line. But still, not such a bad scenario, especially because their cavalry are getting caught up with my spearmen. I've moved some Yari Samurai out to both flanks to stop the enemy's cavalry going round to the rear, and managed to catch them in both cases. And here you can see the enemy's cavalry very foolishly getting itself caught on some long spears, and they're going to be cut down. Here the rest of the enemy's heavy infantry are engaging my front line. The enemy has tons of heavy samurai in their ranks, and I have pretty much only ashigaru in my army. However, my ashigaru are quite elite, so I was expecting them to hold out at least for a very long time, and I do have a numerical advantage, which means at some point I should be able to get around the back and start reducing the enemy's morale. You can see here a big pile of horses where the enemy's horsemen have thrown their lives away. It looks like some more horsemen here are throwing their lives away. Now they're piling in some infantry for these fights. We can see that these heavy enemy Naginata samurai actually can't really do anything against the slowly advancing spear wall presented by these ashigaru, because in most cases they can't get close enough, and where they are getting close enough, my ashigaru are too experienced to be immediately killed. So things are going quite well. You can also see the matchlock ashigaru who've pulled back behind the line are now sniping through the gaps that are appearing in between the spear units and just taking out enemies one by one. Quite sneaky. They are very good at noticing when they have line of sight and when they don't, and taking cheeky pot shots, so they're not being completely useless back there, at least. I'm also on the right flank there pulling matchlocks around to hit the enemy's rear. On the left side I couldn't pull my matchlocks around because the enemy's cavalry were marauding too much all over my left side. So I'm having my matchlocks fire at them, and I'm deploying my one reserve unit, which was some Yari Ashigaru, to come and lock those cavalry in place while the matchlocks smash them off their horses, and that worked pretty well. So in the centre, you can see the enemy's numbers are about equal to ours, perhaps a little bit greater, but out on the edges, we're winning out quite easily. Another enemy cavalry unit here being destroyed by some Yari Ashigaru. In the background there, you can see some Yari Samurai have just defeated an enemy cavalry unit. Overall, we're managing to get a nice flanking advantage on the enemy's force. Here in the middle is where the battle would be lost if it was going to be lost, and you can see that all of our Ashigaru are gradually being defeated by the enemy samurai. See, I'm even using just normal Yari Ashigaru to hold the line here. Really a bad idea, so I actually am relying quite a lot on my ability to flank them, but you can see that flanking is beginning to happen even on the left side now, so I've cleared up all the enemy's cavalry. There was a bunch of heavy infantry out there who had detached themselves, but they were being killed by a swamp of Oda men who'd gone out to take them down. The enemy's archers at the back had been defeated by my level 9 bow samurai, who just completely sniped all of the enemy's archers, and now the enemy centre is getting really surrounded. They are in trouble. I even have tons of units I'm not even deploying at the moment. I could have surrounded them even more if I wanted to, but the enemy routs at this point anyway. So all of their men who are routing are going to be run down because they're too close to my men to actually escape. This is going to be an absolutely decisive Oda victory. So this is only one of two Hatekayama armies currently attacking Umi, but at least we've defeated one with relative ease there. Our formation didn't break up at all. We pretty much crushed the enemy, even though my little matchlock plan at the beginning failed. So perhaps I'll have a chance to try that again without using the skirmish mode and see if it works. So here's the battle results. We lost around 700 men, the enemy losing over 2,000. A perfectly lovely result for Nobuhide and his men. So that's that one Hatekayama army dealt with. The question is, can we deal with the other one? Because there's another one just there to the west of the castle. It's in reinforcement range of the castle's garrison, so again, Nobuhide can rely on those ashigaru inside the castle to back him up. However, he has insufficient movement points to actually trigger the battle. So instead, I'm just going to sit there and stare off against them. They probably can't win in the attack, so at least the situation is safe for now. And that's going to give me a turn to replenish all of the ashigaru I lost during that battle and make things better for next time. So now we return to the situation in Wakasa, where the Amako's huge army is bearing down on the province, and I have about 2 and a bit Oda stacks in total ready to try and defend against them, including both General Takayama and Nobunaga. So I'm really committing to this fight, because if those two guys died, things wouldn't go very well. Now what I wanted to do was sally out of the castle and attack the enemy, thus pitting the enemy's 3 stacks against my 2 and a bit. But I can't do that. It seems that my troops are somehow have been sabotaged, so they're not able to actually try and sally out against the siege. So the only thing I could do instead was have my 2 armies outside the castle attack the enemy by going around the side of the castle, but actually the enemy agents were blocking me from doing so, so that wasn't an option. What kind of death does the day wear? To know, we must look to the 12 horizons, where the smoke dances like a lost tree. The sun hides from the land who have forgotten. Men raise banners to proclaim themselves. None are able to escape or forget their call. Men are thinned like a ceasing rain. The day is wearing death in its entirety again. So I've been forced to leave the Amako situation for now and end the turn, and you can see the Tokugawa take the chance to move troops into Owari province. It looks like they are wishing to challenge our dominance there once again. Now it's time for the Chosakabe to act. They already have an army in the province, and that army marches as if going for the east bridge towards Mino. At the same time, some Hattori take the road towards Mino. It seems Mino is going to be the focus of an enemy attack soon. However, I need to think about this situation right now. The Amako are beginning their assault on the castle. According to the balance bar, things aren't so bad. The regiment limiter is going to make things a little bit worse, and as you can see from the little flashing icon, my castle gates are open, which means I'm not going to be able, in theory, to put up a stalwart defense against this heavy enemy attack. But of course, I really need to keep Wakasa in terms of my grand strategy, so I'm going to be forced to do what I can to reinforce this castle and get all the extra troops I have outside into the castle as soon as possible. Here's the castle itself, Obama Castle. Last time we saw it, it was just a drawing. Finally, it has become something real. You can see the enemy are focusing their attack on the west and southwest sides of the castle, and that's also where all of their massive reinforcement armies are going to begin coming onto the field. So that's a good thing for me. It means I can focus the defenders inside the castle into one small area rather than having to spread them them out. It's going to mean my defense is more tight and compact. It's going to hold for longer. But of course, what I really need to hold on is for the Oda reinforcements to get inside the castle. And here they are, coming in on the far east side of the map. Actually a very good place for them to come in. It's going to be quite easy for them to get towards the castle without having to deal with too many enemies. There's only 3 regiments of enemy troops in this area. It's 3 units of lone sword ashigaru. So what I did was detach 3 units of katana samurai to hold them down, whilst everyone else was ordered to just sprint for the castle as fast as they could. Inside the castle, I'm beginning to form up the battle lines, forming up my reserves on the inside with matchlocks looking down over the sacrificial units on the lower tier. You can see that my gates have been broken, and actually there are dead bodies inside the gatehouse even when I began, so that was a bit worrying, a bad omen. Some of my men seem to have immediately died of shock upon seeing the enemy forces, who as you can see are now approaching the castle. I'm forming up here with long yari ashigaru, yari samurai, katana samurai, regular yari ashigaru, pretty much everything I can get my hands on to hold the enemy in place so my matchlocks can take the enemy out. My cavalry from the reinforcements have almost already arrived, so those 2 generals coming in, Nobunaga and Hatekayama, are going to inspire the troops inside and allow them to fight even more powerfully. The rest of the men are on their way. It looks like one of the enemy units of lone sword ashigaru was trying to follow my generals, so when they turn around they're going to have a nasty surprise seeing the Oda column slam into their rear. And way out on the edge of the map, the katana samurai have got locking down the enemy's lone sword ashigaru. They're doing a good job. They're going to be gradually defeating these enemies, and the fact that the lone sword ashigaru are so far from the rest of their army will demoralize them much more than it demoralizes my katana samurai. So now the enemy are beginning their actual attack on the castle, putting their first men over the wall. They're taking arrows and matchlock fire from the gates and walls above them. This small band of brothers is making a really brave assault on the Oda lines, taking arrows as they go. There's just no chance for them because the rest of their men have been slow to catch up. So gradually the enemy's war machine is going to build up. We're going to get more and more troops piled into the melee, and in fact there are going to be more and more targets for my range units to fire at. So in some ways this is a good thing. You can see here katana pirates trying to get through a spear wall. That will never happen. Those katana pirates will be wiped out if they charge that spear wall as they did now. And look, my reinforcements have actually almost already arrived. The enemy took quite a long time to begin their attack. So just as the enemy have started attacking, I'm able to start reinforcing my position dynamically whenever gaps appear in the lines, or whenever it looks like an area is about to break. I can pile more troops in to stop the enemy getting into the inner tier, which means it's going to extend the amount of time I have to shoot them with my matchlocks for as long as is possible. You can see here the little red puffs as my matchlocks are firing into the enemy's heavily armoured ranks and just eliminating them. The matchlocks on the wall have an excellent firing angle, and they're pretty close. At this range, those matchlocks are going to be devastating. Any armour the enemy has will not do anything to stop the projectiles, and because the enemy is so bunched together, this is actually going to be pretty accurate. So even the matchlock ashigaru, who are traditionally very inaccurate with those weapons, will be able to get loads of kills per second just because they're firing into a huge blob. If they miss one guy, they'll hit the guy next to him. You can see the enemy's forces are really starting to pile in now. They've pretty much got equal numbers to us on the on this tier of the castle. However, from the edge here, I'm trying to kind of flank around their position. If I wanted, I could start pushing troops to try and push the enemy back to the wall, but really I want to give them some ground on the wall so that they present a larger target. So I didn't want to actually attack. I was willing to just have a big defensive reserve. Now here's the key aspect of this battle. Troops out here, there's more enemy troops out here standing around. What are these troops doing? I was wondering this from the very beginning really. You see there's more troops over here doing a similar strategy of just hanging around at the back of the map. And I thought, are they sort of trying to hold a giant reserve? Well, it's too far away to actually be a reserve at this point. The actual answer is, it's a glitch. At least that's my thinking. It's those troops kind of got stuck where they were standing. I think they were intending to use them in the attack, but they got stuck and they couldn't. As a result, they only sent in part of their army, and that army is now in trouble because actually we have about strength equality inside the castle, and my defender's advantage is annihilating the enemy. They're losing troops fast. My men have much higher morale, their experience. My generals are inspiring them. My matchlocks are putting fear into the enemy ranks as they don't know why their men are being cut down left, right and centre by this mysterious force. You can see the enemy's numbers are beginning to thin. I was even so cheeky as to send some men outside the castle to defeat some randomly marauding enemy light cavalry. Those light cavalry are going to have a very bad day against this regiment of Yari samurai. They'll just eliminate them entirely. Now at this point in the battle, something amazing happened. A huge chain rout began of all the enemy forces already inside the castle. At this point, I seem to remember I literally started laughing, because when this battle began, I was stressed that the defeat in this battle would cost the entire campaign. When I saw this moment, I realised that defeat would be impossible and that this would in fact be an easy victory. So we simply mow down all the troops inside the castle, giving me tons of time before any extra enemy reinforcements come in to reform my lines as I see fit, piling in reinforcements, resting my troops, restoring their morale, forming an even more impenetrable barrier than I had before. And look at this, we can tour around the ground in front of the Oda troops, and it's covered in the bodies of enemy troops, and that pile you can see around here is only going to get deeper, because the enemy now has a fun reserve deployment strategy they're going to do. What they're going to do is they're going to send in single regiments one at a time. You can see them running them down the hill here. They're coming onto the map from outside the battlefield, so it seems the enemy was being penalised with some sort of regiment limiter, which I've actually never seen before. I was under the impression they were not penalised by this. Perhaps they can only have 3 stacks because they tried to deploy 4 in this battle. But basically what they're doing is, while the majority of their army just stands around, they're going to send 1 regiment at a time into the castle to face my now even more impenetrable spear wall. It's a couple of regiments deep and many regiments wide. This spear wall is completely impossible to get through, especially coming uphill. The enemy coming in out of formation, no cohesion, taking arrows and matchlock fire as they come in. Just look at this. As I was speaking just now, I just destroyed all of the enemies on the screen. It took just a few seconds to cut down all of the enemies assailing my line. So you get the gist of what's going to happen here. The Oda forces have now got a position which cannot be captured. However, parts of the Amako army still desire to capture it. They're charging in. They seem to think they have a chance. Other parts of the Amako army just stand outside doing nothing. I believe it's a glitch, perhaps a tactical decision by the AI because they didn't want to waste those units. I don't know. But still, the ones who are coming in are wasting their lives. Look at this, coming in big loose formations, rushing into the tightly packed spear wall as if there's any chance of actually getting through even the first rank, let alone the second rank of those spears, and they're being annihilated, only adding to the piles of bodies on the floor and actually stressing my CPU out, because rendering all those bodies was starting to make things difficult and my frame rate was dropping rapidly. So all I had to do at this point in the battle was sit and wait for victory.
So I assume it's all going well? I only joined you here because you kept going on and on about how you were about to break the Oda once and for all. But yet I'm still offended by the sight of their banners in the castle. Perhaps if we climb up here we'll get a better view. What is that? What is that? Fujinaga! Tell Lord Amako that unless his men are trying an avant-garde new tactic, I believe they're all dead! And tell him I'm going to make him eat their weight in manure as penance!
At long last, the battle is coming to an end. You can see that we're down to 5 frames per second because there are just too many enemy bodies in front of my men. A decisive victory is called simply because the battle timer ran out. The battle lasted its full 40 minutes. The rest of the enemy forces outside the castle just stood and waited for the battle to end, and now we'll just retreat on the strategy map because they didn't actually take part in the battle at all. So let's head back to the strategy map and see what the battle results to that absolute massacre actually were. And they're pretty good. We lost only about 400 men and the enemy lost 4,000. 1,000, a fantastic result, 10-to-1 kill ratio, incredible performance from the Oda men, and a disgraceful performance from the Amako troops, truly a shameful display. I thought that since this was a nice battle full of kills, I'll check out the kill screen and see who was actually doing the kills. It looks like some matchlock ashigaru are topping the charts with 600 kills in a single regiment. Some long yari ashigaru getting a similar number of kills, taking the second place, and 400 kills from matchlock ashigaru there. So the top 2 regiments of matchlock ashigaru got 1,000 kills between them. Extremely powerful use of those matchlock units. They didn't even get that much experience for killing those 1,000 enemies. Seemed a little bit unfair to me. But you can see all the units at the top killed hundreds of enemies, whilst most of the units who didn't get involved in the battle at all and just sat in reserve did absolutely nothing. So I could have dealt with an Amako assault that was much greater than the one that was presented as the message to take away from those detailed battle results. So you can see all of the Amako survivors have retreated. There are still around 3,000 Amako troops between those stacks who didn't really get involved in the fight and are thus still alive. As the end turn sequence continues, we see some Hatekayama troops were moving into Umi again, so it seems my defeat at the Hatekayama earlier hasn't dulled their desire to take Umi, and now we finally made it to the next turn. Some bad news coming in, only 2 bits of bad news actually, normally it'd be more than that. We've got some sabotage attempts going on by this sneaky Chosakabe ninja hanging around. So here are the Amako survivors. See, most of these regiments are undamaged because they didn't take part in the fighting at all. There are 3 Amako generals hanging around in this area, so it probably is worth me sneaking over and attempting to kill them at some point. However, I don't want to be too risky. First, I'm repairing the castle because the castle gates, as we saw in the battle, are actually damaged. So if the Amako were to attack properly, we would be in trouble. So now with that situation pretty much safe, since they can't attack again without incurring serious loss, I was free to think about some of the other situations that developed during the end turn sequence there. Here's the Hatekayama that I mentioned just now. 2 Hatekayama armies, only 1.5 stacks. Nobuhide's forces in the area should be enough to deal with them. The issue is just how will I deal with them and in what order. Now that Hattori army sitting on the road towards Mino is quite small enough to be defeated by the relatively small armies commanded by either General Takayama or Nobunaga. So what I decided to do was leave Takayama behind to guard the castle against any future Amako attacks, whilst Nobunaga is going to head down towards the Mino battlefront and swipe aside the Hattori on the way. Now the Owari Mino area is coming under attack from both the Chosakabe and the Tokugawa as well, we can't forget, so I do need to do something about that and try and make the province as impenetrable as possible so I don't face any sort of difficult battles like I did in the last Oda episode, although it is tempting to say that I can just rely on my matchlock ashigaru to hold off vastly greater enemy forces and ignore these inner provinces. Anyway, Nobunaga had defeated the Hattori in an auto-resolve. The Hattori retreated a short distance and I'm basically just going to follow them up, taking them out, destroying what I believe was their daimyo there and their small army. Nobunaga's army still mostly intact, and now he can sneak over towards Mino. I'm going to garrison the castle itself, so any attack occurring in the next turn will be easily defended against, although I don't believe the Chosakabe army that looks like it's going for Mino will have enough movement points to get there this turn if it does take the eastern bridge, as it appears to be moving to do so. I'm also positioning some of my regiments in the area in a slightly more tactical way, getting troops that don't need to be in the castle outside and putting some guys on the bridge there, or near the bridge, so that their zone of control covers the area the bridge is in, so that enemies can't simply walk through without having to at least attempt to give battle, and allowing me to reinforce and possibly accept battle. You can see here it's actually Tokugawa Ieyasu leading the Tokugawa force, the famous man who would unite Japan, so we'll see how he does in the battlefield. Back over on the eastern side of the Oda domain, Kiyonori's force is making a break for it. He's coming out of Hida province and he's going to sneak around to attack the Honma army that's been terrorizing Kaga for many turns now from behind. The Honma retreat, but they retreat to a position quite near the castle, so when Kiyonori attacks again, the guys inside the castle are able to help out. I have a huge advantage. You can see that Honma army is mostly light cavalry, a very strange army that wouldn't do very well in the field, and they're absolutely annihilated in the auto-resolve. So now Kaga is secure, Hida is unsecure as a result, but the enemy don't seem to care about Hida, and now I have the potentiality to go on the offensive in this area. The people of Kaga need fear hunger no more. The dishonoured men of Sado Island have been removed from the picture, and the farms are once again feeding the mouths most deserving of nourishment. But the threat of war remains, and frankly I won't have it. I'm tired of seeing fiefs put to the sword from one direction or the other in this endless conflict. And since it seems my lord refuses to submit and cannot be defeated, we shall have to win to end it. Prepare for a new campaign. So back down in Umi, I decided to take the initiative and use Nobuhide to try and displace some of the Hatekayama forces. The smaller army rushes away as I expected they would, leaving the larger army isolated. However, Nobuhide didn't have enough movement points to actually start a battle with them, so I decided instead I would send a garrison out to actually initialize the battle, and then just hope that on the battlefield itself I can very quickly unite this small and weak garrison with Nobuhide's large reinforcement army. So it seems that we're going to see a battle very similar to the one that we opened this episode with, the combined forces of the Umi garrison and Nobuhide's elite army taking on a big generic Hatekayama stack, only this time it seems they have some more specialized and interesting units, so perhaps it'll be a tad more difficult. So we're down on the battlefield. It's the same battlefield we saw at the beginning of the episode, and with the same Oda army walking across it. This time the ashigaru from the castle awaiting Nobuhide's samurai to come and back them up. Again, the enemy forces are deploying on a little bamboo grove on top of a hill on the south side of the map, but this time they're going to immediately start walking towards us right from the beginning, so I didn't need to actually move away from my deployment point. I just formed up straight away. You can see my deployment is beside a small hill, putting swordsmen in hiding atop the hill on the flanks of the enemy's advance, ready to come down once they get close enough. Now this time I've set my matchlock ashigaru not to skirmish with the enemy, meaning they should just take any enemy charges that come in, and hopefully by not retreating they'll have time to actually get some volleys off and destroy some incoming enemy troops. So the enemy are now coming into range. My archers are already firing. You can hear the enemy battle cries as they begin their charge. My men are pretty slow to start firing, but eventually they begin their fire by rank drill, unloading shots on the enemy. Some enemy cavalry there running across the front are annihilated. Unfortunately, these tiny units of enemy ninjas are just kind of rushing forwards, as are the cavalry, and they get to my men way before I can react and get them behind the lines. So although we do get a few volleys off and we kill a few hundred enemy troops as they're inbound, about probably 100 or so of my ashigaru are killed trying to get back behind my lines. At least it disrupted the enemy advance somewhat. They haven't come in a very good line. They're coming in all at weird angles, which is going to aid me as they crash into the spear wall I presented behind those matchlock ashigaru. Also their cavalry there are pretty much annihilating some of my matchlock ashigaru who didn't go behind the lines, which was annoying. There was one unit which decided to disobey my orders. You can see them here. However, once I finally do get them behind the line, they're going to draw all of the enemy's cavalry right onto the spears, as you can see happening now, and those cavalry are now in big trouble. You can see there's also a bunch of enemy Naginata samurai and warrior monks fighting with the spears. Not too worried about this because these veteran spears won't let even those elite warriors get through their lines. Meanwhile, my plan to flank the enemy here is beginning to work. I'm charging down the hill. The enemy responded with Yari ashigaru. They're going to be annihilated by these katana samurai and lone sword ashigaru who I have coming down. And behind them, I have some matchlock ashigaru ready to provide supporting fire. They have an ideal position, however, they glitched out, so they actually didn't fire at all. Rather annoying, but I didn't really need them because the enemy were so outnumbered and surrounded and moreover outmoraled that they actually started retreating fairly quickly, and I was able to rush forward and start taking out their units at the back. And as those guys started to retreat, the rest of their army just broke entirely because they're taking too many losses, and so all of the survivors start to run. They're surrounded, so they're being annihilated as they try to escape. Overall going excellent for the Oda army. You can see the floor is covered in bodies, both of the matchlock ashigaru who died initially and of all the enemy samurai who died trying to get past my spears. So a decisive victory for the Oda men. Umi is safe yet again, and now perhaps Nobuhide can go on to go and do something else with his troops rather than just defend. But you'll have to wait until the next Oda episode to find out. That's all for this episode, but to see the Takeda grind their way closer to an ultimate victory, Join me next time on the Eternal Law.